Alright, this is one of those steps that you can do out of order. Commonly with solid lumber you do thickness, width, and then length. Same type of thing applies with plywood. You don't worry about thickness because you buy it in a said thickness. Then you worry about width, and then you deal with length. Because of this project, we worried about our sides, our side widths, the length first before we did the width, which is alright because it's plywood. It's just a veneer. We don't really need to worry about the grain too much. But what we're going to do is we're going to do our further material processing steps. So what we're going to do is we're going to be creating that rabbet that goes all the way along the bottom. And I'm doing it this way so that when it comes time to cutting it to the right width, you can kind of make sure what needs to happen. So what's going to happen is we have the width of the blade is going to be the same thickness of our bottom piece. So here's, again, our bottom piece we have AC, it's a little bit nicer, then we have the C on the back, which is a little bit, there's more defects, knots, and everything like that. So I want to make sure that the width of my blade is the same thickness. So here's my thickness, and what I'm going to do is make sure that my the width of the blade that's exposed is the same thickness as the face. So the outside of the blade is flush with the fence right here. So I've already made this cut before. I made a test piece, and I want to make sure that how much the height of the blade is going to be flush with our rabbets that we made previously. So what I want to do is make sure that I end up having this rabbet here flush with this surface as well. Again, it kind of makes, it gets into that craftsmanship a little bit. So what you want to do is, I should have noted this earlier video, is to save that scrap block, because this is what I'm looking for. I want to make sure that I made this piece through here, sent it through, made my test cut, and I want to make sure that this surface here is flush or on the same plane as this one, okay? And the height of the blade, again, deals with this right here. So I have my bottom, and that's going to be flush with the edge. So the face of my bottom is going to be flush with the edge of my side. So I've gone ahead, like I said, I've tested it, so it's all set up. I made sure the fence doesn't move. Now, what I want to do is make the cuts on the same side. So some people say, well, yeah, that's easy, just put your bad side down. But another thing that you want to get into is figuring out what surface you want to be the bottom. So here, you know, I see this knot up here. I don't particularly care for that, so I'm going to make that the bottom, so that I end up having that rabbet that'll end up coming up, and it'll hide most of it. It may not be completely hidden, but it'll hide most of it. And your eye will be showing more towards the top. So what I did is, I know that this is my inside, this is going to face down. And I also placed an X at the bottom on all my pieces. So I went ahead and I found out which one is the bottom. Also here, you have this knot here. I don't particularly want to open up my box, and then I don't want to see that knot. So I'm going to hide that towards the bottom. So I placed an X on the inside bottom edge. So what that tells me is that this X is going to go down against the table and also against the fence. So this X, when I'm done cutting it, it should be gone. I don't need to make a huge X, I just need to make a small one, just so I know which one goes where. And all I'm going to be doing is, I don't necessarily need to use the miter guide, I just want to make sure it's tight against the fence. Now, with your ends, the same thing needs to happen. Okay, so again, we want to make sure that our grain runs from one board into the other, and so it doesn't do anything like this. So I don't have my grain flowing from one edge, and then now I have a vertical grain here. I want to make sure it flows all the way across. So, and when I have that happening, I'm actually going to make a rabbet that runs with the grain on this one. Okay? So here again, I've looked at this. I know it's either this side or this side is going to be my bottom. Well, there's a little bit of splitting in this plywood here, so I'm going to make that my bottom. So I've placed an X on my bottom side. So there's an X on this side, and then on the inside. So again, I know that my X goes against the table, and against the fence. So again, when you make this cut, you want to make sure that the grain on all 4 of your pieces is running front to back on the table saw. And all you're going to do is just turn this on. So I made 2 passes on there because I saw that when I went through the first time, it kind of kicked out a little bit because I didn't have it tight against the fence. So I went through the second time to clean up that all that material because it's arguing off a little bit, kind of a lot of material. So you just want to, again, make sure that you have a nice flush rabbet that runs along the edge. And before you change this setup, you want to make sure that you go through all your pieces. So again, I would take all 4 of my pieces. I did 1, so I have 3 more to do. And what I'm going to do is just send these through. And again, I would send them through twice just to make sure that you get a nice, clean rabbet along the edge.